Welcome, Secretary Buttigieg, and congratulations. I think that the president has made an amazingly great appointment in naming you to this title, to this position. I'm really pleased to hear the discussion about equity throughout all of uh, your plans, the department's plans, the president's expectations on behalf of all of our communities. Um, I think that there are a couple of areas, though, I'm concerned about just hearing more about. I mean, there's the benefit to the community in terms of the restructuring, greater access to jobs and transportation, et cetera. Certainly, that's a factor. It's the jobs. I'm particularly concerned about local hiring and how we're going to ensure that that really is representative of who lives in those sort of workforce areas, and how are we going to deal with the project labor agreements and getting labor to bring in more minorities. What is the leverage that you think your department will have? And then the last part of that there is, what kind of mechanisms do you envision that will improve accountability? That what we say we're going to do is actually being done, and that we can measure it as we're going through in case we have to make adjustments. So if you could just speak to that, sort of just broadly, because I know that we're going to have another chance to talk again.
Thank you. I think this raises some very important questions about equity, because we've already talked about equity in terms of what kind of neighborhood sees an investment, but there's also equity in terms of who gets to do the work, who owns the companies, who is on the job sites. Do they look like the neighborhood they're serving? Do they look like the country whose taxpayers are funding that project? And too often the answer has been not really. And that's something that we take very seriously and view the volume of investment we're proposing as a real way to drive some of these improvements. I would point to the Justice 40 initiative, named that way because it's calling for 40% of many of these investments to go to communities that have been excluded or overburdened, as an example of the administration's commitment to this. And I can tell you, with interagency work and work in the Domestic Policy Council, a lot of data methodologies are being set up so that we can very specifically create a level of public accountability and redirect things if it feels like there's drift. Too often we hear that businesses owned by those who have been excluded just aren't there. I don't think we can accept that as an excuse, because we have to ask where that capacity ought to be and what it would take to build it. As you note, sometimes we're doing better in terms of creating union jobs than we are in making sure that there have been apprenticeship or other pathways to make sure that more workers of color and women are part of those unions, getting the advantage of those pathways into the middle class. And so we do think, with that as a policy focus for the administration, we can drive a lot of progress and improvement in that regard. And that's a whole of government effort that we're excited to be part of at the department.
Thank you. One thing that I recognize that's really bothered me for years is that I go up and down on 195, 295, 95, always construction being done on those roadways. And rarely do I see any minorities out there working on those projects. And I know that's federal money, and I know that that's wrong. So I do hope that looking at it from this administration's perspective will change that sort of experience that I have coming back and forth. I'm also glad to hear about Gateway is really something that we're looking forward to advancing, and that the EIS should be completed sometime in May. I also recognize that there are a whole bunch of other areas that need to be addressed in terms of who will be doing any mitigation with the EIS, what kind of financials we have, and other questions that need to be answered. And I'm wondering if at this time you could give me any indication of some additional timelines, and if there are any other things that the interested parties could be doing simultaneously while preparing these other areas, that we could kind of move this along, because this is a significantly important undertaking.
Thank you. As you note, this may be happening in one specific region, but it has impacts for the entire U.S. economy, and so we recognize the importance of it. And there's also a lot of players involved that we're working to coordinate with. One of the biggest lifts right now, as you mentioned, is the environmental impact statement. So our goal, working with New Jersey Transit and the Port Authority, is to, as well as the FRA and FTA, come to the table with the Army Corps of Engineers and all of the different players involved. Our goal is to complete the NEPA process by May 28th. As you note, that there are a lot of things that can be happening in parallel with that NEPA process and getting that environmental impact study completed. And those things are also underway. In order to be re-rated, there has to be a transition toward that Gateway Development Commission being completed in terms of all the administrative shifts, as well as identifying funding sources. So there's a lot of moving parts here. We feel good about being on track with the NEPA dimension, and we'll continue to keep you updated with all of the different players as the other project elements take shape.
Thank you very much. I know my time has expired. I am yielding back, but I want to say that between your projected budget and the jobs program, the help that we've been seeking and needing and just praying for is finally here. And I am certainly glad that you're a part of that. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.